Hello, everyone. Welcome to our RAIN Africa workshop, the Responsible AI Network Africa. We'll continue to let people in as they enter the waiting room, but we'll get started by introducing the event to you. Today, we're very excited to have an event on responsible AI and the development of smart cities and energy systems in Africa. We have 4 great panel members here today, which will be introduced shortly. But I just wanted to say a few words about our network. The Responsible AI Network Africa is a platform for communicating about AI and the responsible use of AI across the African continent and promoting research and discussion on topics related to it. We have a strong social media presence that we encourage you to follow on both LinkedIn and Twitter, and to get in contact with us if you want to get involved in different ways. I want to first introduce our moderator for today, who is also a co-founder of the network, the Responsible AI Network Africa with us. That's Jerry Kponyo from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana. We're very excited to have him moderating for us today. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Jerry to introduce our great panel.
Okay. Thank you very much, Caitlin, and welcome to all who have joined us today for our workshop. As has already mentioned, today we want to focus on responsible AI and the development of smart cities and to have 4 speakers, and I will keep introducing the speakers. After every introduction, the speaker will give his or her perspective as far as the topic at hand is concerned. When all the speakers have spoken, we will open the floor and we will enter into the discussion stage. You can raise a hand, and then once you draw our attention, we can give you an opportunity to ask a question, whether by only voice or by video, and you can also get to type your question, and then we can run it by our speakers for the day. So as I've already mentioned, today we have 4 speakers: Dr. Sama El-Khateeb, Dr. Eric Tutu-Tchao, Dr. Rachel Adams, and Professor Dr. Isaiah Barreto Rosa. At the right time, I will give some detail as far as each of our speakers is concerned. We want to start with Dr. Sama El-Khateeb and want to know what her impressions are as far as the topic at hand is concerned. Just by way of introduction, Dr. Sama El-Khateeb is an associate professor in urban design and planning, Faculty of Engineering, Ain Shams University. She was the head of the architecture department in Effort College of Architecture and Design in Saudi Arabia for 4 years, starting from fall of 2014. She is the PI of the Smart and Future Cities Laboratory for Sustainable Urban Solutions, funded by STDF, and the PI of the Cairo Charter, a framework for social and environmental justice-driven urban AI in Cairo and beyond, which is funded from Facebook Research and HSCR. Her research work is focused on future and smart cities design and sustainable neighborhoods guidelines. She was the PI for many research projects since 2011 between Egypt and Germany. A case in point is SBET project. On the practical level, Sama was the executive director of Prime Engineering Consultants from 2007 till 2013. Currently, she is a consultant and environmental consultant in smart cities. I present to you Sama. Over to you, my good sister.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry, for this presentation, this introduction for me. It's my pleasure to be here today and to share the RAIN workshop today. Actually, I have some slides to share. I hope that it's sharing now. You can see it, right? So today I will give you some reflections about the topic. And actually, we have been working on the topic of smart cities in Egypt since 7 or 8 years, because we have a plan to have 20 smart cities in Egypt in the future, ending by 2050. And actually, it's really, you see my presentation, right? Yes, okay.
Yes, see. Kindly go ahead.
Yeah, okay. And actually, all of us know that in 2008, the urban area exceeded the rural area for the first time. And actually, it's expected that in 2050 that we will have most of the world will live in urban areas. And this means that we will have many people will live in these cities, and this will really impact on the number of smart cities in the world. Urbanization are going everywhere. We see it all over the world, not only in the developing country, but all over the globe. And actually, there is an endless technology and revolution. We noticed it from the first time we had the Apple Macintosh till now, that we have an extreme technology revolution happen everywhere. I call it the social media revolution versus a smart cities revolution. We have it since we had the first app in our mobile, and from the LinkedIn and Facebook in 2004. Then we have Twitter, then we have Pinterest, Instagram. We have also the timeline of the smart cities worldwide, which really have a significant renaissance in 2011, where the Internet of Things appeared all over the world. And since then, we introduced really the term smart cities, and we are in Egypt keen to have it in our cities in Egypt. The Internet of Things made the world now very connected and made all of the world seeking to have this. And as you know, that smart city component consist of many areas: smart mobility, smart governance, smart energy, and this is the scope of the session today, that we are talking about the smart energy. And the pandemic era and the digital life made this really fascinate the process, and now we feel that we can use the technology more. Today we have meeting online. We practice this from the first lockdown situation till now. It's a post-pandemic era now, which is really accelerated the process of the smart cities and the process of the AI. And what we are focused in the smart laboratory and the Cairo Charter, we are focusing on the urban AI. And it's really embedded in urban environment. And actually, we found that the urban platform is important to think of what's an AI, how can we inform the planning, how can the AI help in the urban planning process, how can it's changing it in the process, can have an impact and effect in the urban AI. But we have also very challenges to apply the urban AI. I'm talking especially in the African continent and the Egyptian continent, of course. Who will control it? Who has the access to the data, and how can we implement it? Do we have challenges regarding the availability of the information, the data, the participation from the people, the social and the environmental justice? And then we had the planning of having 20 smart cities in Egypt. They will be separated all over the country to accommodate almost 40 million people in the future by 2050. We have plans regarding cooperation with Siemens to have a mega project in the wind power plants. We will have combined cycle power plants, and we will have also solar panel project all over the country. And all of this are driving the future of Egypt to invest in energy and urban AI. And actually, that's why we really made a project called Cairo Charter. Cairo Charter aim is to build, is to make a charter for how we can implement the AI by making sure that we implementing the social justice and the environmental justice. It's like a guideline building on the idea of the Ascent Charter, that we can find principles, protocols, how we can implement the ecological and social side justice-driven AI. Because actually, it's still a new process, especially I'm talking in Egypt. So how can we govern this? How we can really implement the urban AI in Cairo in a proper way with respecting to the ecological and social justice for all. And in this project, we had some events and some work. We worked there. We are now in the mid of the project, and we expected by the end of this project that we will have and compose and complete this charter, and we will publish that. So our reflection on this, that Cairo Charter document can help in the idea of the urban AI and how we can manage the process of urban AI in Cairo and beyond, not only in Cairo city, but also in the whole continent in the future. We have really some questions that we are looking forward to answer. We are looking to answer how we can understand the Cairo challenge, how we can map the urban AI ecosystem in Egypt, how we really can understand who will work together, who will be the stakeholders that can work to understand the process of urban AI and the energy system and how we can implement it in the future. In short, Cairo or Egypt is a very promising to have this 20 smart cities in the future with almost 40 million people will accommodate it with thousands of jobs. So to have this implemented, we have a cooperation and very not only from the academics, from the decision makers, from the researchers, from everywhere to make sure that we are going on the right track and we are implementing it in the right track. I will not take too much time, but I hope that I just give you an idea of what we are thinking of and how this topic reflecting in Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sama.
Thank you.
Thank you. At the right time, we will interrogate this particular presentation, and the public can also ask questions as far as your presentation is concerned.
Okay,
thank you. We are still looking at development of smart cities and energy systems in Africa. We want to look at the AI dimension as far as all this is concerned. We want to move on and take our second speaker for the day. And he is in the person of Dr. Tutu-Tchao from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Let me mention that this workshop is being organized in collaboration with the KNUST Engineering Education Project, KEEP for short. So Dr. Tutu-Tchao is a senior lecturer in the Department of Computer Engineering, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. As a faculty member of KNUST, Dr. Tchao's interest is in globalization and technology transfer, and this has resulted in assisting the development of BSc and MPhil programs in computer engineering. He is the leader or the lead for the Digital Development Technologies Research Team, which is under the KNUST Engineering Education Project, KEEP. KEEP is a World Bank Africa Center of Excellence Impact Project. His research interest covers appropriate technology for development in the African environment, optimization of heterogeneous fourth-generation wireless networks, communication for mobile health and ICT for development, and he has extensive journal and conference publications in these areas. Prof. Tchao, Let's hear from you.
Thank you, Jerry, for the kind introduction. I must say I'm overwhelmed. So let me share my screen so that I can share my perspective on this topic. Just a moment. Please, can you see my screen? Okay, that's fine. I'm Dr. Chao, as Professor Kponyo introduced me. I'm the lead for the Digital Development Technology Research Theme, which is under the Kane University Engineering project. Basically, my thought of focus for today is on presenting something on AI-enabled cloud-based systems for smart grid integration. We are going towards the cloud. We are going towards smart grid systems. What role does AI or artificial intelligence play? And then what are the prospects for Ghana's grid network? So it is a fact that energy plays a crucial role in improving the quality of life of every being. Every facet of life, as we are, whether being social, academic, or whatever, energy plays a role. And this fact has been underscored by IEA's energy outlook, which says that there is a dependence or total dependence on energy, and then the number of people who want access to energy more than doubled from 9 million in between 2000 and 2013 to about 20 million between 2014 to 2019, right? Behind all this rosy picture, there is a gloomy picture that is happening in sub-Saharan Africa. That is that in as much as some areas in Africa are making gains in the energy spectrum, over 48% of the population in rural sub-Saharan Africa are without access to energy. The lack of access to energy and the lack of access to reliable power is the bane of Africa's development. That is a fact. And I might even say that as I'm even making this presentation, my ability to complete or finish this presentation is based on my access to reliable power. So let me bring you to the context of Ghana that is more relevant to the RAIN workshop. So in Ghana, we have three main generating systems. We have hydro, thermal, and solar. All these three are mainly based on either high cost of fuel, high technology systems, or reliance on nature, especially in the case of hydro. If you look at our energy mix, hydro takes a predominantly greater share. So where we have to focus our attentions to is the renewable terrain, that is this area. If so, you look at all these prospects for renewable area, especially in the northern part of Ghana, where there is higher irradiance for solar. So in an effort to overcome this higher domain of problems which conflict our energy sector, there is a shift towards the renewable energy technologies to solve some of these problems. In Ghana, there is high prevalence of unreliable access to electricity, and that has led to a phenomenon called doomsor. And this presents interesting dilemma for us. There are two main challenges to be solved in Ghana's energy sector. The first will be to effectively harness the power of sun and wind and other RE technologies to augment what we currently have. And then also, another challenge will be on how to leverage big data, as a first speaker talked about IoTs, AI, all this advancement in technology to solve this problem. The first one can easily be solved because now, currently in Ghana's system or ecosystem, we've made strides in investing in pilot renewable energy technologies, and the cost of these technologies are down. For example, solar, there are solar home systems, there are cheaper access to solar thermals. But the greater amount of work that has to be solved in the context of Ghana is incorporating the data into the energy mix. So that is where we are. So this challenge requires technologies, complex networks, and smart integration of solutions to provide clean energy. For instance, during windless days, if you have to rely on renewables energy, and then also, for example, cloudy days where irradiance might be affected, we have to be able to forecast. This is where artificial intelligence and other disruptive technologies play a key role. So let me take you through an overview of Ghana's legacy or current power grid. So we have the normal transmission generating systems. These are the power generators, VRA. And then we have the transmission companies in Ghana. We have Gridco. Then we have the distribution companies in Ghana, either Electricity Company of Ghana or NEDCO. Then we have the users. In between them, we have some of these operators have some command center where they can have a wide area, situational view and measurement capabilities. And then coordinates between the generators and then the transmitters and then the markets, right? If we have to integrate data and AI into our energy mix to solve all the varying reliability issues, the power thefts, and so forth, then we have to rethink of how we can re-engineer our energy systems to this format, where we have energy being placed on data. So in the previous section, you could not see a lot of interconnection of data flow, but if we are to move to this realm, then every facet, every entity from the market to the service provider, to the distributors, to the transmitters, to the customers, and even to the generators will have to be connected to a seamlessly working systems, right? This provides an interesting opportunity to solve some of the basic problems which limits our electricity reliability issues. For instance, power theft. AI with data, we could account for what is going into our homes. We could have wide area situational analysis. We could do troubleshooting. Engineers on the field could do monitoring. So this is where we need to go to, from the legacy network to the smart grid domain, which we are not yet there. This integration presents some challenge. The first one will be to overcome variations as a result of what? Flexibility issues due to the high penetrations of renewables that are expected. This problem has to be solved. So this is where research within so this is where data comes to play, where algorithms can, for instance, be used to forecast the response as to what is needed, what has to be generated to meet the supply of the market. And this would also require the formulation of forecasted installed capacities to be formulated as what? Mathematical problems to solve this our dying need, right? So what did we do? Let me take you to what we are currently seeking to do as part of the KNUST engineering problem. We see this to be a problem that can be solved using artificial intelligence. So there's a project that we are seeking to, we've been working on currently, which is called DESERA. So DESERA is based on a common principle which is known to everyone who lives in sub-Saharan Africa. In sub-Saharan Africa, we share assets, not just because we just will overcome property. If you live in communities, we share assets. If someone has water, you could go and fetch free of charge. But in sharing this assets, it is because it is the way we live, and it's because it is the way local habits are. So we said that, okay, how can we use artificial intelligence? How can we develop solutions that will leverage on how we behave? So there is a concept called district energy shared systems. So that is the DES. So for this DES, what we are seeking to do is to incorporate renewable energy systems and then smart agriculture innovations to solve a food, energy, water nexus. So with energy has an effect on food, has an effect on agriculture. How do we use renewable energy based on agrovoltaic, CST, multi-tank, all the biomass systems that we have? How can we interplay, get a toolbox, an innovative toolbox to sit between them to coordinate all this, for example, to solve the issues of power thefts that we have, to solve the issue of flexibility, to solve the issue of reliability, right? So this is a tool we are seeking to develop. And it has, I'll just briefly take you through several inputs, and then it has several parameters that we look at, and then the way to combine all this as one innovative solution is where our AI and then the DES tools comes to play to give out the optimum configurations that we need. So the use case that we are currently exploring with our major stakeholder, AMSEC Resources, is the Sarah platform, where we want to integrate agrovoltaic and then smart IoTs and then controllers in there to collect data from a rice field, then analyze it. So as the rice field is producing rice husk, paddy for their rice mill, the husk is generated, which is used to fill used as a feedstock for biomass, which as a result of this feedstock gives a byproduct which can be used to power our homes. So energy to power the rice mill and also power homes. As a result of a byproduct of this, we can get briquettes to be used for clean cooking, to serve the energy needs of domestic, especially women who go around in the north looking for fuel or fetching firewoods to provide heat and power. So with this DESERA platform, you have data sitting between all the various entities to provide analytics and hopefully to be connected to our AI systems and labs here to provide this analytics. What issues do we foresee? This presents interesting work or areas for our students to work on. There are several types of deployment scenarios and issues we see. If it is decentralized processing, as in the local cases, there are issues that can be solved. For centralized processes, communication over large medium presents interesting research topics, which as part of the key project we will study.
We seem to have lost Dr. Eric along the way. So we are still doing, taking the input from our experts on development of smart technologies in Africa with reference to smart cities and then energy systems. We previously listened to Sama, Dr. Sama El-Khateeb, and then we were taking a presentation from Dr. Eric Tutu-Tchao. Once Eric is able to reconnect, we will continue from where Eric left off. But at this particular point in time, let me go on and then introduce our next speaker. So we will go around like that, and when we've taken everyone, Eric can continue from where he left off. So our next speaker is Dr. Rachel Adams. Dr. Adams is a chief research specialist at the Human Sciences, Philosophy, Gender, Technology, Law, and Race. Dr. Adams was previously the senior researcher for civil and political rights at the South African Human Rights Commission and completed a postdoctorate at the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, University of London. Dr. Adams sits on the independent expert panel of the South African Department of Science and Innovation and Council for Scientific and Industrial Research's Center on Artificial Intelligence Research, CAIR, and is a member of the Independent Advisory Group of the Surveillance Camera Commissioner for the UK Home Office. Dr. Adams is further an editor of the South African Journal on Human Rights and the author of Transparency, New Trajectories in Law. Her work has been cited in, among others, Nature, The Guardian, The New York Times, and by the United Nations. So we have heard from the engineers, we've heard from the technology practitioners. We want to look at it from the human rights angle. We want to look at it from the legal angle to see whether what we intend to do falls within the confines of the law. I introduce to you Rachel Adams. Rachel, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I'm really honored to be here. So thank you to yourself and to Caitlin for the invitation. This is such an interesting discussion to be part of. I'm working in South Africa on a number of Pan-African projects to explore what responsible AI means within an African context. My own work, my bigger project, is around decolonizing AI, what it means to talk about decolonizing AI and what that would look like. So today I want to quickly mention some of the problems associated with data-driven societies, some of the problems for the African continent with the global valorization of data and artificial intelligence as the way forward in every single respect. Then I want to quickly touch on the role of data protection law, and spoiler, I don't think it solves all the problems that we might have and that we're going to face and we are facing. And then to think about, well, what is the role of responsible AI here? So there has been a number of reports authored by companies and institutions like PwC that have made massive claims around how artificial intelligence can bolster economies worldwide. And the figure they put to this is $15.7 trillion will be the GDPR, the global GDPR. GDPR? Yeah, sorry, I'm so used to talking about this data protection law in the EU that I'm getting confused. But $15.7 trillion by the year 2030. And what is really unclear is how much of this will be a contribution to the economies of the African continent. Europe and the Americas will soar in terms of their growth. Their economic growth will rise significantly with respect to artificial intelligence and data-driven technologies and how it helps productivity and so forth. But the African continent isn't even charted on these charts and on these figures. Instead, with the same date of 2030, we have a report from the World Bank that says 90% of the world's poor will reside in Africa by this date. So I think we need to be thinking very carefully and very critically about how artificial intelligence is going to increase poverty and inequality between and within countries and how we deal with that. There's been some incredible work around this idea of data colonialism, around the fact that these data systems that are becoming more and more ubiquitous, that require ever more sources of real-time data, are appropriating human life itself in order to feed these data systems, such that human life is being lived in order to generate data, in order to be data points. But I think what the authors of this, so this is Nick Coldry and Ulysses Mejas, have written a brilliant book on the cost of connection. But we need to be thinking about how these types of practices are going to have very different effects in very different parts of the world. This data colonialism will not be equally felt. We will not equally see the benefits of this. We will not equally see the damages and challenges of these kind of data-driven societies. So what is the role of data protection law here? It's considered the kind of gold standard for addressing the concerns in relation to data societies for individuals. The GDPR in in Europe, the Protection of Personal Information Act in South Africa, are pieces of legislation that rest on human rights principles and the right to privacy and the protection of the right to privacy, considered in very individualistic ways. But I'm just going to highlight a couple of the limitations of these laws to address some of the problems that we see with the kind of datafication of life itself and the increasing inequality and poverty this may produce. So the first one is that these laws do not apply as soon as data is de-identified. As soon as data is de-identified, it is no longer personal information, and so personal information laws do not apply in the same way. But of course, this data is made possible by the people that generate it, and then it is used to develop and refine algorithms and AI systems, and can be used, as we have seen, in ways that are biased and in ways that discriminate against certain groups of people. And as soon as this data is de-identified, as soon as personal information is de-identified, the individual that produced that data has no rights to it. They have no right to access it, no right to delete it, no right to know who has their data or what was once their data at any point. Another kind of limitation that is very much related is in relation to information that is hosted on the public record. So this would include personal information on social media accounts. And Facebook, for example, is a social media platform that is widely used across the African continent. And certainly with the Protection of Personal Information Act in South Africa, there is no need to obtain consent, and there's no need to notify the data subject, the person whose data it belongs to, personal information it belongs to, if you are using information, their information from social media. So they effectively have no rights, no access to that data, no rights to it, and no understanding of how it may be used. And again, various problems that these kinds of laws will not be able to address. So if we are thinking about questions of responsible AI, we need to think in terms of local values and local needs. And I think Eric's presentation was a really wonderful example of this, and Samar's work too. In South Africa, and I have colleagues, I teach a class of students in Cameroon, and we've noticed how the Chinese government in particular is giving large numbers and extensive infrastructure for installing facial recognition cameras in cities in order to create smart cities in whether it's Johannesburg or Yaoundé. And as Eric pointed out, we don't have stable electricity, let alone stable refuse collection or those kinds of more basic requirements that's needed for a well-functioning, sustainable city. And there is not even a need, and it's potentially extremely problematic to be installing facial recognition cameras in these places designed elsewhere, designed with values that are not necessarily local values, that don't necessarily meet local needs, being imposed here. So these are some of the issues that we're thinking about. And we're thinking about how far we can engage with the African human rights canon and how it is dealt with really important questions around balancing the right to freedom of expression with privacy rights, with rights of access to information, how it's dealt with balancing the right to self-determination at a national and at a community level, how it's dealt with questions of sovereignty, which I think are critically important when you are seeing this unequal power dynamic between countries that are producing the technologies that are being enforced in local African countries. So I think the last thing to mention is the role of indigenous knowledge, which we are seeing as particularly important and particularly at threat by advanced AI systems that seek to datafy all of our knowledge and intelligence systems in ways that often leave out the rich complexity and the rich ways, the rich networks of indigenous knowledge systems that we have here, and that make the African continent in its various different and diverse ways so unique. The last thing I want to mention is the community rights aspect. Data protection laws think about rights in a very individualistic way, and they don't think about rights, the right to consent for example, as a community right, and the role of indigenous leaders or herdsmen, as we say in South Africa, who allow and provide consent at a community level, for example, for a research project. So these are some of the things we're thinking about when we are talking about responsible AI and what responsible AI within our very different contexts. The context in Ghana is different from the context in South Africa and is different again from Nigeria or from Ethiopia or Egypt. We have to think about all these differences and their complexities and hold these complexities as we think about what responsible AI means here. So Jerry, thank you so much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel. I mean, listening to you, a number of things come up. I was actually thinking what could possibly go wrong with the whole concept of smart cities, what could go wrong with smart energy systems. But you talk about situating it within a cultural context, ensuring that it is of benefit even to the people for whom it is intended. These are key things that need to be considered moving forward as far as the whole concept of responsible use of AI is concerned. I'm sure that there are many people who have questions and even contributions looking at it from the legal perspective and then the human rights perspective. I'm sure we'll get to that very soon. Eric dropped off along the line. We will want to invite him to come back to continue so he can complete it, and then we will take our last speaker for the day. So Eric, over to you. Continue from where you left off.
Okay, thank you, Jerry, for, can you hear me, Jerry?
Yes, we can hear you. Kindly go ahead.
So this, I have only some few slides left. So this tie in perfectly with Rachel's presentation. If the processing is going to be decentralized, for example, if it's going to be done within the communities, then there wouldn't be any major issues there. In as much as there will be issues, it wouldn't be too much pervasive or anything of that sort. But if it is going to be, for example, our platform is going to be extended to cover the whole national grid, right? Then centralized processing has to come in addition to the decentralized processing. Data privacy, data protection, all these things come to play. For instance, how can we ensure communication over uneven terrains? That is an issue because of the several interconnections. How do we ensure performance parameters and QoS are met? That's quality of services. And then security, and then the responsible use of AI, and then the data and the infrastructure. How can we ensure that? So these are questions that need to be studied. And of course, are being taken into consideration as part of this project. The opportunities that exist for us are endless. We have available computing power. Even our mobile phones have enough power to do a lot of processing, unlike it used to be some few years back. And we have talented researchers who are motivated to come up with innovation solutions to solve some of the data issues that can be leveraged to ensure the development in the energy sector. And then we could also have useful partnerships with stakeholders, because to create an enabling framework and enabling condition for some of either all or some of these initiatives to fester, governments and major stakeholders will play a key role in this. So all in all, there are interesting prospects. AI presents an interesting use, and its leveraging for the energy sector could be very useful. Of course, there are issues that need to be studied and discussed as part of this workshop, and we can investigate that further. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Tchao, for that insightful presentation. We will want to continue and then take our last presentation for the day. And the presentation will be by Professor Dr. Isaias Barreto Rosa. By way of introduction, Professor Barreto is CEO and board chairman of the Agency for Multisectoral Regulation of the Economy, ARME, in Cape Verde. Between February 2014 and February 2018, he was the ECOWAS Commissioner for Telecommunication and Information Technologies. Additionally, Dr. Barreto da Rosa is a Cisco certified instructor at the University of Central England in Birmingham, United Kingdom, and Nelson Mandela University, South Africa. Before joining ECOWAS, he established his academic career as a software developer at the Catholic University of Portugal, researcher and professor at Tallinn University, Estonia, and professor at the Jean Piaget University of Cape Verde, where he took on several additional responsibilities as head of Department of Science and Technology, Director of Technological Division, Director of the Digital Education Lab, and Cisco Academy Manager, Microsoft Academy Manager. We have heard from Egypt, we have heard from Ghana, we have heard from South Africa. We move on to hear from Cape Verde. Professor Barreto, over to you, please.
Thank you very much indeed for this introduction. I'm speaking to you from this small island. Very often when we talk about Cape Verde, people ask us, where is it located in the map? So it's a real pleasure to be here and to share some thoughts about this interesting topic with you. Now, I would have a couple of slides to share with you on artificial intelligence and smart cities in Africa. But since the topic is related to Africa, to our continent, allow me to take 2 or 3 minutes to talk a little bit more about our continent. Because very often when people talk about Africa, they mention wars, they mention corruption, they mention poverty, but we very often don't mention the other interesting things that we have in the continent. So I hope you're able to see the slides that I'm sharing. This is the African continent, but it seems to be an awkward map, because we have a continent of 30 million kilometers squares, and we have enough space to include the whole Europe inside, which has about 10 million kilometers squares. We still have room to put the entire United States of America, around 9.5 million kilometers squares. We still have room to include the entire China inside, and we still have room for more. We're talking about a continent of 1.37 billion people, and where we can find 1/3 of the natural resources that we have in the world. Africa, as I mentioned, has 1.37 billion people, and China has more population than our continent, has 1.44 billion. Very often people don't say, though, that in Africa, the GDP per capita is greater than China. People are mentioned that in Africa, despite all the challenges that we have less poor people than China. And people don't mention that in Africa, we have more computers than China. That's just a comparison. We took China, we could have taken another continent eventually. In Africa, we have the second largest mobile phone market in the world, where more than 80% of our population do own a phone. It is interesting to note also, just to conclude this quick introduction, that between the 4 countries that will grow the most between 2019 and 2024, we have 4 African countries. But very often people do not mention that. According to the GSMA, in sub-Saharan Africa, the mobile phone industry contributes with about $120 billion to the economy. That's about 8.2% of the GDP. The world average is 4.5. So it's interesting sometimes to note these specificities of our continent. And in conclusion, let me just mention this. Very often when people talk about Africa, they talk about wars, about crimes, about conflicts, military conflicts. Yes, of course, we do have military conflicts. And very often they mention the Horn of Africa, where we have in the region of Great Lakes. But people often don't mention that there is more deaths due to conflicts in India only in India, than in the whole Horn of Africa and Great Lake region, especially due to the revolt of Naxalites and the conflicts in the region of Kashmir. So when talking about our continent, it is important also to emphasize these aspects, which are very interesting and that very often are not mentioned. But coming back to the core of this topic we have at hand, smart cities, artificial intelligence in Africa. In Africa, we know that the majority of our population live in rural areas. In West Africa, for instance, only 20% of the population dwell in urban areas. However, the cities urban areas have 75% of the telecom infrastructure of West Africa. So it means that we have 80% of our population living in rural areas. According to the UN forecast, within 30 years, 30 years, the sub-Saharan African population should double. We have the double of the population we currently have in 30 years. And 60% of this population who will be living in Africa within 30 years, they will be living in urban areas. So this will bring a tremendous challenge to the cities related to infrastructure, including power, water, and sanitation. As mentioned, I'm currently the CEO and chairman of the board of the multi-sectoral regulatory agency of the economy in Cape Verde. We regulate many sectors: telecoms, ICT, energy, post, water, sanitation, transport. We regulate a lot. We're a very small country with 500,000 inhabitants. We need to optimize resources. So we have a single regulatory authority that is in charge of regulating all these sectors. One of the key challenges that we have is related to water supply. In some cities, 80% of the water that is produced is simply wasted because of the pipes that we have. They're old and we have challenges with them. And we're talking about a country where it barely rains. The water we drink, we have to take it from the sea and desalinize it. How can we address this kind of problems? To use artificial intelligence and smart city solutions to have sensors, IoT sensors spread all over this network, exactly to identify, locate areas where we have problems, report, and then so that the operators can indeed take the necessary action. So given this population boom in Africa within the next 3 years, the population will double. We need to come up with intelligent solutions to address the infrastructure challenge that we'll have, especially when it comes to water, sanitation, and also power. We have interesting example. We have someone from South Africa here, where, for instance, in Cape Town, in Africa, of course, we do have interesting solutions of sensors spread all over the major cities, enabling the capturing of real-time data, as mentioned here, from these millions of objects, including water meters, electricity meters, waste bins, traffic lights, and street lights. These are key to help us address the problems that we will have, especially in the future in Africa, due to this population boom. The benefits of this real-time data extend across different sectors. We can mention farming optimization, for instance, traffic management, crime management, this is key, waste management, water and power supply, that is currently challenging. We have now in Cape Verde water supply, and this network of IoT sensors are indeed key to help address these problems. We know that in South Africa, there is this Squinet provider that collects and shares, through this network of IoT sensors, interesting data that helps in this process. And apparently they're covering 90% of the population and 90% of national roads in South Africa. But of course, we have heard here the example of Egypt, what Egypt is doing. We have an interesting case in Kenya. As you know, Kenya is the home to mobile money, to M-Pesa in Africa, which is currently in over three continents, and has contributed mobile money to take about 3% of Kenyan households out of poverty. So this kind of solutions can indeed be the solution. But I would like to conclude by emphasizing at least 3 aspects that we should never neglect when addressing these smart cities and AI solutions in Africa. First, connectivity. It will be difficult for us to move ahead with this initiative without connectivity. Today in Africa, the internet penetration rate is around 43%, while the world average is over 60%. We need a lot of work to get there. We need $100 billion to connect the remaining part of our population within the next 10 years. If we don't address the connectivity issue, we have a major problem. So connectivity is key so that we can have in place the necessary infrastructure to avail ourselves of the opportunities brought by smart cities and artificial intelligence. Number 2, affordability. We cannot, in fact, have solutions that will be able to touch the lives of our citizens if these solutions are not affordable. Today, when we look at the global panorama, we can clearly see that out of 46 least developed countries in the world, 33 are located in Africa. And in these developing countries, 1 gigabit of data costs roughly 5% of the average income, GDP, average GDP per capita, while the recommendation at global level is 2%. So we definitely do need to address the affordability issue here. And we can address that with infrastructure and with the right policies in place. Third is cybersecurity. We cannot avail ourselves effectively of the potential of AI and a smart city without addressing the problem of cybersecurity in Africa. In sub-Saharan Africa only, in 2018, we lost about $2 billion due to cyber crimes or cybersecurity incidents. Nigeria only lost in 2016 $550 million due to these problems. If we don't put in place the right policies in terms of legal framework, training, capacity building, and sensitization of the population about this issue, we will have hard times getting this done, availing ourselves of the opportunity brought by smart cities. So connectivity, affordability, and cybersecurity are key to address, to better use the potential of smart cities and artificial intelligence in Africa. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Barreto, for that insightful presentation. If there is something that I'm taking home, connectivity, affordability, cybersecurity, very critical as far as smart cities in Africa is concerned. Maybe we probably might have to add responsible use of AI, data protection, ensuring that the rights of the person for whom technology has been developed is respected at all times. Okay, so Eric, just put on your video so we have our presenters waiting patiently to take questions and reactions from the floor. Okay, so I see a hand up. Anas Musa. Anas Musa, you'll be unmuted and then you can ask your question. So I see Anas. After Anas, we take Osman Mahmoudou. Anas, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to ask my question. First of all, I want to commend our presenters. I'm really excited about their presentation. It's very precise and concise. it's not so much stressful. Thank you very much. And my question is about my question goes to Professor Barreto. He spoke about Africa having less poor. We have less poor, people than China. And on the face of the pink sheets, we know that Africa contains a lot of poor people and all that, and he has not given any reference to it. So what will he say about it? How is he going to explain this to us? Thank you very much.
Okay, so your question has to do with the statement that Africa has less poor people than China. You want the reference based on which that statement was made. Okay, let's take a quick reaction from Professor Barreto, and then we can pick the others.
All right.
Thank you very much for the comment and for the question. In fact, we all know that China has GDP greater than Africa. In the meantime, taking into consideration, we have to look at the income of each citizen, each person living in the country, and I can, of course, later share the African Development Bank report, which exactly mentions that. So that is the source. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you very much. So purely when it comes to GDP, the population plays a very key role. So once you do the divisions and the mathematics, you realize that the statement indeed is accurate. We go on to Osman. Osman, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, my question goes to Sama, and then it also goes to Eric Tutu-Tchao. And it is with regards to like smart cities, and then Eric Tutu-Tchao talked about the power grid that you would have and stuff. My question is that the underlying infrastructure, the already existing infrastructure that we have, is it going to support these technologies and these things that we want to do? Because you look at the telecom infrastructure of Africa and you see that they are still on 3G and then 4G. And we clearly see that when you talk about IoT and then massive connectivity, you see that it cannot support the latency and then some of the things that we need to do. Like smart city, we need massive machine type communication for IoT devices. You say that sensors must be cached over all parts of the for massive connectivity. That's what are we going to do to improve it? Either is this new 5G, are we going to leverage that, or we are still going to use the existing 3G and 4G, which we know that the key KPIs of it cannot support some of these technologies that we talk about for the smart grid and stuff.
Okay. Thank you, Osman. So first.
He was asking about the infrastructure in Egypt, right?
Yes, the question has to do with the infrastructure. We know that there are challenges as far as infrastructure is concerned, and without it, the whole concept of smart cities will be flawed. So how do we navigate? How do we deal with the deficits as far as infrastructure is concerned?
Yes, actually, we have in Egypt a significant situation, because actually we have Cairo, one of the most populated city in the world. We have many informal areas with really very bad infrastructure regarding sewage, water, and electricity. So what the government now planning to do, they are now planning to have the new cities to be smart cities. So the focus that when they are making, we have fourth generation of new cities. We started the first generation from almost 40 years ago. And now we are in the fourth generation. In this fourth generation, they are trying to make it a smart city. So, for example, in the new administrative city and in Alamein city, in the infrastructure from the beginning, they are trying to make it to have the smart grid from the beginning. It's very changeable to have it in the existing communities and in Cairo, in the old city. So what they are making now, they make new legislation for building, and they kind of stop building all over Cairo now. We can't build anymore. We are now making new legislation for the and bylaws for building. So the infrastructure now stable. We need no more buildings, no more development inside the city. Now we are planning to convince people to move from the old city to this new cities because of this issue of infrastructure. What we are expected as an academia or an expert in the field of smart cities, that it's really hard to transform the old city to be totally smart city. We have partially areas in it, but in the new cities like Alamein city, Port Said city, or even the new administrative city, they are from the beginning trying to build the infrastructure to really have the smart grid, to have the sensors everywhere, to have renewable energy, and even they now trying to make mega project to make the buildings even smart. So I hope this answered your questions, that we have this significant issue, that we have the existing built environment and we have the new built environment. In the new built environment, the new cities, we are going to implement the smart cities. But in the current Cairo or the old Cairo, no, we are doing it like small projects, not a mega project, or not a movement from the country or the government. It's really hard because of the old building, the old infrastructure, the high population, the traffic everywhere. But there is some campaign, some initiatives, some work from private sectors, other projects from some areas, but actually not a transformation to the whole Cairo to be smart Cairo.
Okay, thank you very much. Eric.
Thank you, Jerry. So I'll just share this screen to buttress this point. Osman, I agree with your assertion. Infrastructure, as I said, these integration issues with our legacy grid will present a lot of issues, right? So for example, what can we do? We cannot just sit aloof and say, yeah, we cannot do anything. So for example, if we have to develop smart applications, what you can do as a researcher or as a student is, for instance, develop, you see, the over-the-top AI-enabled applications. How can you develop applications so that they can be as light as possible, right? That is a solution to the connectivity problem. For example, within the decentralized chain, blockchain, how can we design efficient blockchains, for instance, to if the network can't push, if we can't push a lot of information through the pipe, then we might as well make efficient how we put the information through the pipe. So we have to design blockchains that are efficient. Then the solutions that you have to do with respect to connectivity, all these things have to be made very efficient. It's true, and I accept that there are issues, and I have hope in that. That is where I see opportunities for the talents of today to help come up with innovative solutions to solve some of these infrastructure issues. Of course, integration will bring reliability issues, will bring interoperability issues and so forth, but there still are opportunities we can leverage on using our current expertise to solve. That will be my comment for now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you for that response. I'll pick Catherine Pike. Catherine, you have the floor, please. You can unmute. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for this exciting event. I'm happy to have listened to these talks, and I'll need to disclose myself. I'm part of Sama's team on the Cairo Charter, but my questions deal with that are actually addressed to the two last speakers. So this is also a very nice flow regarding distribution of questions to all the participants. The two last speakers are talking about responsible AI, but more from a regulatory, legal point of view. And when thinking about responsible AI, obviously we're talking about ethics. You know, that's first and foremost what comes up with responsible. So we're talking about ethics, which then can be translated into laws and regulatory mechanisms. Now, I am wondering, and I would like maybe especially the fourth speaker can talk about that, but I would love to hear Rachel's ideas about this as well. We do know that in many African societies, you know, there are many gray zones between the legal and the illegal, the formal and the informal. And I am wondering whether you, how do you deal with that when thinking about responsible AI from a perspective of the law or from the perspective of regulation?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. We can start with Rachel. Rachel, take a go at it. The gray areas, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Katrin. So I think some of the gray areas are the areas that need to stay gray and that artificial intelligence shouldn't try to colonize, or we should think very carefully about its role there. AI works in ways that seeks to centralize in many respects. It seeks to institutionalize, it seeks to bureaucratize aspects of society. And in some ways, this can cause new power dynamics. It can reinforce old ones. It can cause information asymmetries. And so I think these are all the kinds of questions we need to be thinking about when we think about what responsible AI means. And I don't agree that responsible AI necessarily means ethics, which necessarily means law. I think we, in a Western context, we're thinking very much about ethics, and that ethical system is quite distinct from a legal system. The ethical system is arising in many respects from companies or from multilateral or minilateral institutions. They are often arising from the very companies that are deploying and designing AI. So in some respects, ethics is a get-out clause from the legal. In the same breath, I think the law does not address, and that was what I was trying to discuss earlier, is that the law does not address some of those really important challenges, whether they're moral human challenges or whether they're ethical ones. And we need to recognize the differences there. We need to recognize that the ethical value system in different parts of the world is not necessarily the same. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, and mention that I think responsible AI seeks to go beyond the ethics discourse, although it hasn't yet found a normative framework for doing so. It is about the safe and fair deployment of AI, which speaks to ethics, but may involve and invoke bigger things than that. Thank you.
Probably by way of follow-up, still, Rachel, don't go yet. Regarding smart cities, possible use of AI is concerned, what could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong is that you're generating and collecting vast amounts of data that can be used for surveillance, that can be used to limit people's political rights, their civil and political engagement in society, that can be used to vest power in the wrong hands. So I think we need to think very carefully about all of this data that's being generated, who has access to it, what it's being used for, how citizens understand, the extent to which they understand how that is being used, and the ways in which it may be used to their detriment. Yeah, I hope that's clear.
Okay, that is fine. I don't know whether any of our speakers will want to have a go at that. Energy systems, what could possibly go wrong as far as responsible use of AI is concerned?
Okay, before Barreto comes in, it's serious. For example, if you have a ubiquitous connected systems, people could determine when you're at home. Your energy profile could tell, well, what type of gadgets does he have, right? So it comes in respect, it ties in with what Rachel said. So security will be key. Responsible use of the data will be key. And especially when we go to the realms of peer-to-peer energy trading, when your colleague you are connected to him knows that, well, you're at home, it's serious. So there are interesting prospects that exist that AI brings. Equally places responsibility on us to use it fairly. That will be my short response for now.
Okay. Barreto, you want to take a shot at it?
Yes, please. Now, I think here we need to strike the right balance. I'm talking here as a regulator now, between promoting innovation, because we need to promote innovation, and set a group of rules to ensure that we protect the consumers, we protect the citizens, and that we make sure that these systems are responsibly used. Because as a regulator, we mentioned here about the rules, the laws, etc. But of course, we should not be an obstacle to innovation. The regulation has to come on the right timing so that it doesn't hinder, it does not stop innovation. As a matter of fact, what we want to do is to promote innovation. So it's very important to find the right regulatory approach so that on one hand, you can promote innovation, but on the other, you will be able to follow up on issues that might bring problems to the final consumers. And how can we do that? There are different ways. Number one, we can use what is called a regulatory sandbox, where we have a certain exemptions for 1 year, for 2 years, bringing in some companies, some researchers, etc., to come up with innovative solutions, but in a specific area where they have some freedom, even in terms of legal aspects, to innovate and to move ahead with their initiatives. That's number one. Number two, what can also be done is adopt a specific regulatory approach, which is called trial and error. Instead of setting a lot of rules from the beginning, we give the operators, the innovators, some freedom to move ahead with their innovations. But we follow up very closely to make sure that key values and principles are protected. So in a nutshell, what I would say is that we have to strive to find the right balance. Number one, promote innovation, and not prevent companies, researchers from innovating, but also to come up with a good mechanism so that you can follow up, monitor in order to protect the interests of the citizens and of the users. This is the right balance that we all have to find.
Thank you so much. It's getting more and more exciting. I think I have a hand up. I will pick that and then we will go to the chat to see if there are any questions there. The person goes by the name Justice, but probably is, if your hand is up, I'm giving you the opportunity to ask your question. Kindly go ahead.
All right, thank you, Doc. My name is Chibueze. I'm one of your research students in Kenya University here. Yeah, yes, my question was actually going to be in line with what the Doc had addressed last, because I was going to ask, is this law prohibiting research students to research into these gray areas? Because eventually they were only identified as gray areas because some people had actually researched in those areas and found out that they could be categorized as gray areas. But in Africa, most of the things I've had here is the use. How are we and what are we doing to be able to sustain, build our own AI from scratch? Because it's very vital. If China is the one giving us the equipment, China is the one building the algorithms, China is the one running it at the same time, eventually you find out that we may apply laws that physically we will discuss academically, but under the hood, the blood that is running the systems are being controlled from China servers. How do you catch them off guard when they compromise maybe privacy and all of that? So I was going to say it's very, very important in my contribution that there will be massive deployment in research, because our African students have to key into this. Doc was talking about companies who are being innovative. No, this innovation should start with our students, because the companies, most of the companies are foreign companies. They are based either in China, or they are Chinese in Africa, or in Chinese in South Africa, or US people in South Africa, and not Africans. You see, so if in that 2030 is a future thing we're talking about, if we will be able to beat this system, it means there must be huge investment in producing young people who will both sustain, develop, and deploy these systems. Then we'll be able to define the rules and the laws that work for African context. Else, we will still be looking at laws that worked in China. And when it comes to that time, we will still have this problem of infrastructure. Because if we don't have modes, for instance, in KNUST to produce some of the things Dr. Tutu was talking about here, we'll still go to China to get those equipment, and then those problems will still be with us. So my question was going to be, besides this contribution to the human rights doctor, are these laws prohibiting students from researching into those gray areas, so that we'll be able to define, when students are getting into research, they know exactly which areas to get into, or the laws are open-ended when it comes to campus deployment, because we have to start from campus deployment before we begin to deploy into the larger society. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Chibueze, for that contribution. I think it's Rachel who mentioned that whatever it is that we are doing must be situated within a cultural context, and we must not lose sight of the culture of the people that we are developing the technology for. I just want to bounce this off each of our panel members in this discussion. What role do you think governments can play in ensuring that the cultural context is preserved and the use of technology is to the benefit of the people for whom it is intended? Looking at it from the smart cities concept. Shall we start from Sama, and then the others can come in? What can governments play with reference to ensuring that the context within which the technology is deployed is to the benefit of the people? Yeah.
Yeah, I will talk from the Egyptian perspective as well. Actually, what we noticed lately in Egypt, that they are encouraging the innovation in small and medium enterprises and even research projects. So a huge amount of money now is giving for the researchers, for the academics, for the students to study smart cities and to make even incubators for their ideas, and by the end they will have some project in the real life. For example, in my faculty, we have the iHub, which is a huge entity that encouraging young academics, researchers, engineers, even students to apply to getting fund to have small and very, very small enterprises and very small projects in smart areas. So they encourage people to work in this area. What I really think of the government, the role of government is to invest in the R&D, the research and development. So then we can have a local people, Egyptian, who are making the technology, not imported and exported from outside. So it's really important to have generations that they learned the ideas of smart city. They to have another generation that they fully Egyptians, for example, not import, not have it from China or from any other country. When we are talking about even the energy project in Egypt, we are talking about that we have a cooperation with Siemens. Siemens, it's a multi-international company to make the project in Egypt. We don't have the capability to have it an Egyptian company. So we have this cooperation with Siemens, for example. But we are, now what we noticed in all over Egyptian universities, we have now new department for renewable energy, for smart cities, courses taught, some independent studies are doing by some people and some academics. So actually, it's really new, not an old area of experience in Egypt, but we noticed that people are really interested. There is a support from the government, support from the Ministry of Education and Higher Education, and the role now is for the academics and for the researcher to work and to support this and to try to implement this. We have a vision for 2050 that we will have 20 smart cities in Egypt. This need really Egyptian, they have the know-how. We need to have small and medium enterprises that they are working in all of this in the softwares and the hardwares and everything, so they can produce it locally, not to import it from outside. I hope that we can make it, and we have from 10 years or 20 years from now, we can have Egyptian candidates that they can really work in the field of the smart city, and they can really give the experience to the whole continent, maybe, or the whole world, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me bounce it off Barreto. Barreto, what do you think governments can do?
Yes, thank you very much. Now, here, there are two aspects that I would like to highlight. Number one, when it comes to security, one of the Justice mentioned the issue of having equipment from China and having all these security aspects from China. Now, one of the topics that we're discussing, even here in Cape Verde, is that, very often we need to have more than one suppliers. We can, for instance, have equipment from one supplier and have security solutions from another one. And that is important because it makes sure that, the system, at least from our end, is safer from the usage perspective. If the hardware solutions come from one end and the software security solutions come from someone else, that will definitely help. In Africa, many telecoms operators do have these problems because they all depend on a single supplier. And then when there is a security issue, they have a big issue at hand. So that might be one of the way out. But when it comes to empowering, local industry, local population, local researchers and students, I can't agree more because this is indeed key. We need to come up with local solutions that will definitely address our needs. 60% of our population in Africa is below 25 years of age. And also in many countries, 60% of our young people are unemployed. What we need to put in place in terms of policy is to promote youth entrepreneurship. Because, if you come up with a group of young people, let's say 30 young people, sorry, you give them 1 month or 2 months of training, and then in the end, you give them a laptop and a smartphone, I'm sure they will develop wonderful, innovative solutions that will definitely address the problems that we have in the continent. Very often what happens is that we simply import solutions that are designed for developing countries that are not properly adjusted to our reality. So what I would like to say is that, yes, it is true, we need to come up with local solutions for local problems. And in order to do that, no one is better than local population. Our researchers, our students, and especially our young people. We need to come up with an African policy to promote youth entrepreneurship. And if we manage to do that, in some cases, we might even, help our young people not to travel to other developed countries, using boats, etc. And many of them dying in the seas, exactly because we have solutions locally. Policy to promote youth entrepreneurship within the continent, that is key. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barreto. I'm going to bounce this last question off Rachel and then Eric, and then we'll bring this time to a close. The whole issue about trust. We are looking at leaving the power grip to the management of AI solutions. We are looking at facial recognition cameras and all that controlled by machines. What can we do to get the average African to have trust in such systems, such that when he goes to sleep, he knows that even though it's powered by AI, his life is safe? How do we deal with issues of trust as far as AI's implementation in these areas are concerned? Rachel first.
Thank you, Jerry. I think there should be distrust in technologies. That's my answer. I think until we can see that these technologies are clearly of benefit, as we see that mobile phone technologies are clearly of benefit, we learn to trust them. Mobile phone technologies that are now connected to various networks and infrastructures and taking data and we don't know about it, we should distrust what we don't know about. That's our political right, and it makes for an engaging democracy. On a slightly unrelated question of trust, that's not quite trust, I wanted to just note that one of the other things that governments can do, and I agree with what Samar and Barreto has spoken about before me, is to ensure that there are good antitrust laws and practices so that the kind of competitive economic space is not dominated by big tech players. The technology doesn't just come from China. It really comes from the big techs of Amazon and Google and Facebook and these types of companies that are working and operating in an anti-competitive way that works out of the kind of market and competition, local businesses, local entrepreneurship, small, medium enterprises. So I think antitrust laws and policies that ensure that local enterprises have viability in the market is really key too. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, Eric, you have the last bite.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry, for the question. It's to ensure trust, there should be openness and accountability. For example, if solutions are developed and exposed as APIs, the users should be given assurance that the information is used for what they are meant to be used for. 2, education. There should be education on the use of technology and how this technology are being used for their own good. 3, there should be solutions which are very, let me say, solid. See, for instance, we had a case where there is this now in Ghana, people can buy credit or recharge their electricity units over the phone, right? So a friend of mine goes and then uses his phone to buy credit. The credit is not loaded on his meter. It says that, didn't I tell you, the distribution company is a thief. It's not that the distribution company is a thief. It's a flaw in the implementation of the application, right? So he never goes back to use the app again. Even as much as I assure him that the app works, he doesn't use it, right? So there should be education. The solutions that we, in quote, propose to our users to be solutions should deliver on what they proposed to do. So besides all that they've done, or all the other speakers have said, I see interesting prospects for AI in our continent. The sky is the limit. You have talented and motivated researchers and youth. And I don't see why, as someone will say, why should we fail? Right? That will be my closing comments.
Okay, thank you. So in conclusion, connectivity, affordability, cybersecurity, very critical as far as the success of smart cities and AI in all this is concerned. And indeed, from the discussions that we have had, it is evident that we should have local solutions which work, African solutions which work. It's not just about saying we should shelve the foreign solutions, but if we are developing our own indigenous solutions, they must work so that it can repose trust in the technology and the people for whom it is meant for can benefit fully. Finally, use of technology so that the rights of the individuals, the rights of the intended users are protected. I want to pass it over to Caitlin, and thank you so much for making this an exciting time. Thanks to all our panel members. Caitlin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. And I just wanted to take a last chance to thank all of you for being here today, all the audience members for your great questions. I'm going to stick the RAIN Africa website into the chat there for everyone. We really encourage you to check out the website. We have a newly launched data teaching and use case repository for everyone to access that we'd also like to add to. So join the newsletter, follow us on social media. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone on behalf of RAIN Africa, KNUST, and the Technical University of Munich for being here. And we hope to see you at our next event.
Okay.
Great, have a great day, everyone.